Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving straight into a massive, high-stakes boardroom plot that is fundamentally threatening the leadership of global soccer right now. Seriously, we're witnessing what can only be described as an unprecedented civil war within the world's most popular sport, and it all centers around a highly secretive, multi-billion-dollar financial proposal that is completely blown up in the faces of FIFA's top executives. This explosive fallout is tearing open deep geographic divides and resurrecting ghosts from the organization's notoriously scandal-plagued past. So, let's get into it.
To help untangle this mess, here is our roadmap. We're going to cover the secret billion-dollar plan, Europe's immediate backlash, a decade of failed reforms, the reality of missing legacy funds, and finally, the upcoming fight for FIFA's future.
Okay, starting right off with Section 1, the secret sell-off.
Take a look at this staggering number, $4.2 billion. That is the exact amount FIFA President Gianni Infantino actually attempted to raise from private investors. And what was the deal on the table? He was offering these investors a 20% stake in World Cup commercial rights. It was this massive, highly secretive proposal pushed forward right after the 2026 World Cup concluded, essentially offering up an unprecedented sell-off of the absolute crown jewels of international soccer.
To really grasp the sheer scale of this, we have to talk about the FIFA Forward Enterprise, or FFE. This was a proposed spin-off entity valued internally at $20 billion. Its purpose? To essentially take total control of the soccer body's wildly profitable commercial and tournament operations for the next 12 years. In exchange for this handover, the plan promised each of FIFA's 211 member federations a one-off payment of $20 million. But here's the catch. This was reportedly the pet project of just one man. In fact, FIFA's chief operating officer actually went public, stating that the staff felt entirely deceived by their boss. The whole plan was rushed forward with a really strict mid-September deadline for federations to just accept it.
Well, that brings us to Section 2, Europe Strikes Back, because the fallout from this secret plan, it was immediate.
UEFA hit back instantly. Within days of this plan leaking to the media, European soccer's governing body threatened major legal action. Just look at this quote from UEFA's legal counsel. They placed FIFA on formal notice. They demanded that 18 top FIFA executives, which included Infantino and the head of global soccer development Arsene Wenger, preserve all of their data, documents, and electronic messages. UEFA was essentially signaling they were prepping for outright warfare in the courts, arguing that this plan was fundamentally incompatible with the proper governance of football. And the backlash went way beyond just guys in suits arguing over boardroom equity. The absolute icons of the game stepped in. Portuguese great Luis Figo, who, remember, previously ran for the FIFA presidency, called the proposal a grubby, underhand plot. He didn't hold back, publicly demanding Infantino's immediate resignation and stating the move was driven purely by self-interest.
The political and economic realms weighed in heavily too. Prominent figures like the prominent economist Mark Carney publicly condemned the complete lack of consultation. This is especially significant when you remember that Canada just co-hosted the 2026 World Cup alongside the US and Mexico. Carney rightly pointed out that failing to inform senior executives and board members on a deal of this massive magnitude should be fatal for any leader's tenure.
So how do we get here? Let's move to Section 3, a decade of dysfunction.
Let's rewind the clock a bit. A decade ago, the U.S. Department of Justice completely rocked the sport. They arrested 7 senior FIFA officials in a Zurich hotel on bribery and corruption charges. Then, in 2016, Gianni Infantino was elected on a promise to clean house and restore FIFA's image, adopting a series of major structural reforms. But fast forward to 2024, and FIFA had quietly reversed many of those exact same oversight mechanisms that were designed to keep the executive branch in check. This steady, quiet erosion of accountability is the direct preamble to the 2026 FFE crisis we're seeing right now.
A joint statement issued by the human rights group Fair Square, along with numerous academics and experts, lays out a pretty extensive list of compounding grievances against the current administration. They neutrally outline the argument that FIFA is actually more poorly governed today than it was during the 2015 scandal. These allegations range from the new 32-team Club World Cup skewing competitive balance to claims about manipulating bidding rules to ensure Saudi Arabia faced no opposition for the 2034 World Cup. The statement also highlights severe human rights violations linked to recent tournaments, a failure to address unequal pay, and a systemic centralization of power.
Now, let's look at Section 4, Missing Legacy Funds and Host City Disputes, because this is where the global boardroom drama hits the local level.
Despite operating as an association under Swiss law, enjoying not-for-profit status, and routinely demanding extensive tax exemptions from host nations, FIFA has somehow managed to accrue an astonishing $3.97 billion in financial reserves. They are literally sitting on a massive stockpile of cash generated from record-breaking tournament revenues.
So think about the stark contrast at play here. While FIFA is sitting on nearly $4 billion, local U.S. cities like Kansas City are still chasing relatively microscopic, unpaid legacy commitments. Local authorities spent tens of millions in public taxpayer funds on security, transport, and logistics for the 2026 World Cup. In return, executives from several host city committees say they were verbally promised a $1 million legacy payment to build mini pitches and support grassroots football in their communities. But today, they're still waiting for those funds, unsure if they will ever actually arrive.
All of this perfectly sets the stage for Section 5, the battle for 2027.
We are currently looking at a massive, deep-seated geographical divide that is splitting world football right down the middle. On one side, you have the wealthy federations of Europe and North America, UEFA and CONCACAF. They've declared a total loss of confidence in leadership, they are actively withdrawing their letters of support, and they're openly seeking a rival candidate for the upcoming election. But on the other side, Infantino retains a massive stronghold among African, Asian, and Middle Eastern nations. Federations in countries like Morocco, Qatar, and Indonesia have publicly declared their loyalty. You have to remember, many of these less wealthy federations rely heavily on FIFA's financial distributions just to operate, which makes that initial promise of $20 million from the FFE highly appealing.
In a desperate bid to project some semblance of stability, Infantino recently held a crisis meeting in Morocco. The result of that meeting was a leaked letter to member nations that offered a pretty contradictory message. It paired a rare apology, admitting that mistakes were made and that the FFE proposal should have been handled differently, with a very firm threat, stating FIFA will no longer tolerate any attacks on its integrity or reputation. Meanwhile, the rumor mill is in overdrive. Reports surfaced that Infantino was actively seeking backing from the Trump administration, and FIFA even had to publicly issue denials over allegations that they promised Morocco the 2030 World Cup final just to secure their political loyalty. Which brings us to the ultimate crossroads. I want to leave you with this final thought for today's explainer. As the pressure continues to mount, as the legal threats fly, and as the geopolitical divide in global soccer widens into a massive chasm, who will ultimately control the future of the beautiful game? Will the 2027 election be the catalyst for genuine, lasting reform, or is the current power structure simply too entrenched to fall? Thank you so much for joining us as we unpack the data and the drama behind the scenes. We'll see you next time.